In 117 AD, on the edge of an empire once great to rule the world, something vanished into thin air. The fabled Ninth Legion, the Legio IX Hispana, which had been last noticed fighting in Britain, left only rumors of defeat, disappearance, and mystery. A century and a half later, their fate still haunts the boulders of Roman forts and the misty hills of Caledonia. Today, we continue Rome's lost soldiers' journey, where they were headed, what they found, and why their journey matters. Join us as we follow them into the unknown. In the crowded fortress of Eboracum, modern York, AD 108, was a year of what ought to have been routine redeployment. The best of Rome's legions, Legio IX Hispana, had restored the stone castrum and now were led north into the uncharted waste of Caledonia. Under Tribune Gaius Flavius Severus, they filed out of the fortress gate onto a less traveled road, supply wagons creaking behind them, native guides unused to the discipline of Rome's legions trailing behind. There was a tense but expectant atmosphere in the ranks. These were seasoned men, veterans of Britain's wars, but the farther north they went, the fewer signs of Roman civilization remained. As night descended on the heath, standards fluttered and fires flickered in the gloom, the Ninth's eagle banner proclaiming Rome's presence. But at the sunset edge of sight, the silhouette of the column on the horizon was less, more vulnerable than ever before. This was not a parade. It was an invasion into a world in which the laws of Rome did not apply, and in which a new page would be turned in the mystery of the Ninth. In the bleak light of AD 110, the march of the legion through the Cairn Gorm Pass turned into a nightmare. The narrow defile gave no room for maneuver. Caledonian warriors launched a deadly hail of arrows from the cliffs overhead. The Romans flailed, shields raised into testudo, but the rocky terrain operated in the interests of the ambushers. Pandemonium erupted, wagons were overturned, the supply train cut off, and in the shadow of the pass, the legion's tidy column disintegrated. Tribune Severus led a counterattack, firm and unbending, but even he could not entirely reverse the catastrophe. In the flickering torchlight of dusk, he looked out across the wreckage of the wagon train and scattered bodies, his face set hard by the cost. This was not a defeat in open battle, but an ambush in terrain Rome did not control. The Ninth, for the first time in decades of fighting, felt small in the vastness of Caledonia, and so the first domino in their disappearance fell. By AD 112, the Ninth had established a field fortification high up in Caledonia's hills. It was made of turf and timber, and symbolized Rome's ambition at the edge of untamed country. Within its palisade, the legion sat around blaring fires, studying maps and strategizing. Tribune Severus addressed his men beneath the grey sky. "By Jupiter, we hold this line." A native guide, newly sworn to the allegiance of Rome, kneeled before them to place his oath. Roman pride would before long be tested. On what seemed like a businesslike night, a landslide from a cliffside, guided by unseen enemies bored into stone above, wiped out a section of wall and slew some of the soldiers. Their leader staggered into camp, wounded and stunned, babbling of a new threat gathering among the northern tribes. And to top it all, the climate turned lethal. Peat bog banks slipped, ramparts gave way, and watchtowers were submerged in storm. Rome's steel drill appeared frail against earth and enemy both. The vow given at the fortress started looking less a vow and more a commitment to pay the price. The destiny of the Ninth began to turn. In AD 114, the Ninth gathered at Dunbarton Hill Fort for somberly attended council of war. In the Roman officials and allied horse leaders, the command tent was full, the midday sun glinting over their rumpled uniforms and dipping standards. In the midst of the throng in the center of the tent, Tribune Severus studied the map table, his finger running along the route into the unknown. Then a messenger burst in, panting, followed by a captured Caledonian war leader. In the dim, candle-lit tent, Severus leaned forward, commanding him to tell the truth. The native pointed northwards, to leaping flames on faraway slopes, hidden camps of new tribal warriors. That night, as twilight gave way to darkness, Roman sentries gazed out from ramparts into the glow of enemy camps. And at that point, the mood changed. The Ninth were no longer advancing legionnaires. They were hunters, hunted by an enemy who seemed to merge into shadows. Severus's grip on his gladius grew tighter. This campaign was no longer a conquest. It was one of survival. By AD 116, the Ninth had reached the fortress the Romans called the Black Fort, a stone fortress perched on a crag, ramparts dripping with mist and menace. Under the glow of torches, the Romans established ballistae and siege ramps. Ropes creaked. Bolts hissed. The assault began in darkness, legionaries moving as one dark tide up the slope, but the defenders clashed with savage ferocity. Boiling oil erupted from ramparts. Screams shredded the quiet of combat. Roman discipline dissolved as armor fled and men fell. Even the battle-hardened Ninth winced at the ferocity. And then the moment arrived. A gap in the wall, pennants streaming aloft, Roman surge bursting gates. Inside the fort, the slaughter had been indiscriminate, Roman and Caledonian dead together in the ruin. With dawn breaking, Tribune Severus was on the ramparts, looking out over his victory among blazing hills. But the cost had been seared upon his face. The battle won, but the war was deepening. The Ninth had advanced, but in advancing had moved further into the abyss. In AD 118, the Ninth advanced into the high moorland beneath Loch Lomond, land wrapped in haze and menace. Camp, where it had rung with life, lay now ominously still. Legionnaires picked their way through heath and swamp, clumping boots splashing, looking around. Torches blazed in the fog, guerrilla shadows moving and vanishing. A patrol had vanished. By dawn, the wagons were gone, rations remained unopened, and the standards sagged. Tribune Severus knelt by the prostrate eagle, stunned. His men waited silently around him, their discipline, their morale, their identity shaken. That morning's mist was living, devouring camp and column with equal ferocity. It was not defeat by the hands of a great enemy line, but disappearing by insidious nature and terror. The Ninth had disappeared from their own eyes. The pulse of Rome in that wilderness thinned. Their absence did not announce itself with a cry, it erupted with a whisper. By AD 130 and afterward, the Ninth's myths began to spread. Along the stone ramparts of Hadrian's wall, there was still the memory of Rome's northern ambition. Archaeologists at Eboracum excavated a tile stamped with the impression Legio IX Hisp, a stark reminder of the lost legion's existence. DNA analysis of contemporary Britons revealed that up to 1 million men may carry the legacy of Roman settlers, very possibly the offspring of the Ninth among them. In the peat bogs of the Caledonian highlands, the wind still sweeps through deserted hill forts where the legion once camped. At historical reenactments, the sound of the past is stirred as men in Lorica raise replica standards under dawn skies. Glass-enclosed museum exhibits show the eagle standard of Legio IX along with its unknown destiny. And on clear nights, the stars wheel above in the same hills the legion marched. The Ninth may have disappeared from Roman records, but they never truly departed the land. Their presence echoes in stone, earth, and DNA. Their disappearance is an open question, but ultimately their memory outlasted military roles. It became myth, it became learning, it became you. The story of the Ninth Legion is not merely a tale of lost soldiers. It is a mirror held up to the fragility of empires, of men, of memory. Rome commanded the world, but even Rome left gaps in its ledger. The Ninth didn't just march into oblivion, they marched into history. And now their story, their mystery, becomes part of ours. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the mist of ancient Caledonia and the echoes of Rome's fading heart.